Good morning and welcome into another Saints pregame live chat. My name is Jeff Nowak, WWL Radio and Audacy Sports digital sports producer, here to get you ready for another noon kickoff. We have had plenty of these. It feels like there's only been two, but the last 2 weeks, noon starts. It's easy to take for granted how few noon starts we had watching Saints games the last few years, but we have been loaded up with them to start the 2021 season. And we're back at it again today. The Saints are out on the road, technically for the third straight week. They opened at Jacksonville, which was technically a home game, but back on the road. The good news, after today, the Saints will be returning to New Orleans for the first time in about a month since they evacuated ahead of Hurricane Ida. They'll get back to working at the Oshner facility in Metairie, and then we'll be on track to play week 4 against the Giants in the Dome. But first things first, out in New England, outdoors, Bill Belichick versus Sean Payton, the two longest tenured coaches in the NFL. I want to say Sean has been there 15 years. Bill, I want to say 17, maybe more than that. It's hard to tell at this point. But it's not every day you see a matchup like that, so it's going to be interesting. First things first, make sure you check out all of our products over on Audacy.com/WWL. A lot of pregame content, a lot of it written by yours truly. Make sure you check out Okay, I think we're back. Not sure what happened there. Internet appeared to cut out. Appreciate all of you that stuck around through that. But let's see. I believe we're back up and running here. If y'all can't hear me, leave a comment in the chat because it's tough for me to know. But we'll just get right back into it. Again, check out all of our products on Audacy.com/WWL, assuming your internet is working, unlike mine, for that 5-minute stretch there. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at WWLAMFM. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. Getting ready for the game today. We should have inactives here shortly. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're watching over on Facebook, give us a like, and make sure to check out over on YouTube and subscribe to that channel for the latest video content. But okay, let's get into the game today. And obviously, after last week, going to be a lot of questions to answer for this Saints team, particularly up front, particularly the offensive line, the protection. I'll flash up the injury report for this week so you can see what we're looking at. It is a much better, if you will, injury report in terms of the players available. As you can see, the only player who has a game day designation at all is Eric McCoy, a center. He will be out. That is still a significant loss for this team, as you saw last week. And they were trying to figure it out on the offensive line. You had Cesar Ruiz shifting over to center from guard, which he also did in week 1, had a lot more struggles in week 2, a hostile environment, a very, I don't want to say difficult, but a very confusing scheme the Panthers run on the defensive side of the ball. Really caught them, just completely in a lurch, and they just weren't able to figure it out. A lot of zone blitzes, which we'll get into in a bit, a lot of just disguised pressure that just kept Jameis Winston out of his element, just off center all day. He wasn't able to set, he wasn't able to scan, he wasn't able to go through his progressions, and the results followed. I think they'll get that sorted out. You do need to remember last week they were going into the game without several position coaches. I think by game day they had got offensive line coach Brendan Nugent back, but he had missed the entire week. And you can imagine going into a week without your offensive line leader. I think it's easy to chalk up some offensive line difficulties to that. How are you preparing for a game without the guy whose job it is to get you prepared, to get that group ready to go? So I think they'll have a better showing today. The Patriots defense, Bill Belichick defenses are always tough. They're going to have a lot of challenges. You're going to see a lot of the same looks, but I think that you'll see a group ready to compete today the way they weren't last week. Before we go any further, if you have any questions, comments, make sure to drop them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them in the back half here. First, I do want to play a clip from Deuce McAllister, who went on WWL this week and helped break down some of the issues. I had it queued up, and then my feed cut out, so you're going to have to bear with me. It's this one.
Bobby, you played against zone blitz.
Yes, it's zone dog. Yes,
that was the only look. Now, where the 3 plays back to back to back right before halftime, it was the same play. One time he came from depth. The other 2 times he was on the line of scrimmage. That's the free safety. They dropped the defensive end.
Yep.
I mean, we did a poor job of picking up the blitz, and it wasn't a fancy blitz. It was the same blitz. Instead of running it the first time where
it's a college blitz.
Well,
it actually started.
Deuce,
I can tell you where it started. Old school
Capers.
Dom Capers. Oh, I'm glad you said
Capers.
Dom Capers.
It's Capers.
So that was NFL stuff, and then the colleges.
Yeah,
All right, there you have it. So what Deuce is talking about there is the 3 plays before halftime. If you remember, the Saints were driving, had a chance to kick a field goal, cut into that lead right before the half, and they made a bit of ground. They were set. They looked like they were in field goal range, and then it was blitz, sack, incomplete pass, sack to really end any chance they had of kind of cutting into that lead. And that really kind of manifested in the second half. They needed those points before halftime to just get some positive momentum. It didn't really feel like the Saints could have played 8 quarters and scored 30 points last week. That was just the day it was. But those blitzes really kind of shined a light on some of the issues the Saints had behind the line of scrimmage, before the snap, getting their protection set, IDing the mic, which if you don't understand football concepts, what the mic linebacker is on the field, it's a position. When you're miking a guy at the line of scrimmage, you're essentially setting the center of the protection. You're setting who you think the center of the defensive coverage is going to be, so you can make sure you are aligned properly on the offensive line and with the running back to pick up all of the potential rushers. You don't want to allow free rushes, so that's why the quarterback or the center is going to ID the mic and set the middle so that you can set your protection. You can kick out on either side. If you expect an extra rusher, you can move the running back to that side to pick up a potential blitz. And that just was not happening in week 2. And why does that become difficult? Well, here's just a quick look at what that kind of looks like. Let's see. I got to find it. All right. So if you look here, this is the type of look the Saints got all day. This is one of those blitzes. I think it was the first play that Deuce was talking about before halftime, where you see this is a heavy pressure look. The Saints are loaded up. They have protection. Kamara stays in to max protect. They have a tight end, but they still can't pick it up. Why? Because they're showing a six-man front here, but only 4 of those guys are coming. 2 of those guys are going to drop out. And as you can see, I tried to diagram it here. These 2 guys, the linebacker creeping up is going to drop out and pick up the crossing route. This defensive back on the edge is going to drop up the seam. And then you're going to have the safety take a blitz late opposite that pressure dropping. So the goal here is you're going to try to get the Saints to load up to block on that left side of the line, thinking you're going to have an overload blitz on that side, only to be outflanked on the opposite side. How do you correct this? Well, you have to ID the mic and ID the center, and then figure out, okay, where is that blitz coming from? And if it does come from the top, it's got to be on the running back to pick up that blitz. But he has an assignment. And you can see from the snap, he goes right to the middle. I have a second screen grab here. Kamara picks up the pressure in the middle, and this blitzer has a free run at Jameis Winston. He still had a chance to complete a pass, but your odds of completing a pass once you have a rusher in your face go down drastically, and he was not able to do it here. On the next play, they sent the same blitz. They overloaded on the opposite side and sent the rusher from that side. Kamara picked it up, but it was still heavy pressure, and Jameis couldn't get it pass completed. And then on the third play, they ran this exact blitz again. The safety came up and sacked Jameis Winston. So these are the type of protection breakdowns that happened all week last week, right? And these are the type of things that are hard to diagnose going into a game with a new center without Drew Brees. You're only in your second game without Drew Brees. And I think what you're seeing over the course of 2 weeks is, there's a lot that Drew Brees did that you might not have noticed. A lot of the protections, a lot of the pre-snap adjustments, you kind of take that for granted because it's there every week, but then it's not. And you have to rely on your center. You have to rely on a new quarterback to be able to make those reads and make those adjustments. And they just didn't do it. It was not done well last week. It was a very difficult matchup. You don't see a lot of heavy zone blitz defenses in the NFL. It was a scheme, as Deuce pointed out. Dom Capers, Dick LeBeau really popularized it with the Steelers, with the fire zone blitz. And, it's driven offensive lines mad for years. And it's just a matter of, you got to be able to ID where the rush is coming from. You got to be able to scout it, and you got to be able to prepare for it. Because when you do, and when you pick up those blitzes, when you get the protection right, you can burn the defense really easily with a little bit of time. They're under leveraged in the secondary. They have defensive ends running with the wide receivers. They have linebackers trying to chase a really fast guy across the field. All you need is a little time, and you can tear it to shreds. And that's why, it's called a college defense at times, because with a week of preparation and with NFL offensive linemen and an NFL quarterback, you should be able to pick it up. And I think the Saints are going to improve. But this is a lot of what they saw last week. You're going to see a lot of it again. Bill Belichick has watched this film. He sees exactly what happened last week, and he's going to see if the Saints have figured it out. And if they haven't, get ready for another long day, because I can tell you what, the Patriots are very capable of running zone blitz schemes. And once they ID something, the Saints just don't seem to be able to stop. They're going to keep sending it. And so that's going to be the big question today. Can that offensive line get it sorted out? Can they protect the quarterback? Can they give Jameis Winston a little time to throw? There's been a lot of questions about the wide receiving core. Can they get separation? Obviously, you don't have Michael Thomas, but Marquez Callaway was opening eyes in camp. Will Jordan Humphrey is a talented receiver. A big guy can go up and get the ball. Chris Hogan, revenge Hogan game, right? He's going back to New England where, get this, he still has the Patriots record for the most receiving yards in a playoff game by a wide receiver. Actually, by anyone for that matter. Which, when you think about all the playoff games the Patriots have played, that's a pretty impressive record to hold. He set that in the Super Bowl loss against the Eagles. I want to say it was like 185 yards, which is a pretty solid record. There's a lot of weird records out there. There's a lot of obscure records. That's a solid one. That's one that I would be like, yeah, I got this. Because I don't know if any it's over the last 2 decades. And Chris Hogan, who was playing professional lacrosse 3 months ago, he is the record holder for the Patriots for the most receiving yards in a playoff game. I think that's pretty impressive. He's going to have a role today. Kenny Stills, elevated to the active roster. Yes, that Kenny Stills, the same Kenny Stills that came up with the Saints years ago. He's back, fast guy, hopefully can create a little separation. I don't think he's going to be a huge part of the offense, but I think they elevated him for a reason. I think they see some opportunity to stretch the defense downfield, and he's the guy that can do that. Deontay Harris, obviously, is always going to be a speed threat. But as you saw, he has been incredibly effective in the return game. The only parts of the Saints' entire system, really, that did well last week was special teams, specifically Blake Gillikin punting. He's been a weapon so far his first 3 games. And Deontay Harris in the return game. I mean, that was the only part of the Saints offense that worked was pinning them deep and returning it when they kick it. Deontay Harris said a couple weeks ago, before the game, that he was getting bored back there because people have stopped kicking to him. The Panthers didn't, and the Panthers, in a much closer game, that could have cost them. So it'll be interesting to see if the Patriots allow Deontay Harris to impact the game the way he did in just kicking the ball at all. But for now, we're going to look at it and see whether this offense can get on track a little bit. I'm not worried about separation because separation takes care of itself. The Saints have never been a team with wide receivers that create crazy separation. You're talking about like the Tyreek Hills who are just running away from people. When you're a West Coast offense and you're trying to create angles, the separation isn't as big of a deal as people have been making it out to be because you have guys who can make contested catches, right? I mean, that's what the Saints receivers do best is they create leverage in tight windows and they make the catch. So the separation to me is not nearly, it'd be great if Jameis can come out of his drop and immediately spot someone running 10 yards free of a corner. But, that wasn't the Saints' issue. They weren't going to win that game if a wide receiver had created separation and they made a big play downfield. That's not how they win games. And what needs to happen is the offensive line needs to protect the quarterback, and the quarterback is a factor in that too. The quarterback needs to set that protection. It's not just, the offensive line is bad, right? The offensive line is a product of the preparation and the pre-snap actions and getting ready to stop the coverage. If you just sent 5 offensive linemen out there and say block them, they're not going to win. They have to have a plan. They work as a group, right? And the quarterback's part of that group. The running back is part of that group. So it's not all on the offensive line. It's not all on the quarterback, but they all have issues they have to correct. Cesar Ruiz had a terrible week. But if you give Jameis Winston time to at least set and go through his progressions, even if there isn't crazy separation, he can make these throws. He can give guys a chance. And I think the Saints wide receivers have always been a group that makes contested catches. I think Marquez Callaway is a great example of that. He's a guy who, neither of those catches in the preseason were wide open. They were just good catches. They were good. The ball was delivered well. He went up and got it. And you don't have to have crazy separation to do that, but you do have to have time to put the ball where it needs to be. You can throw a guy open, but you can't throw with anticipation if you're constantly falling off your back foot and running for your life. So that's the issue the Saints need to correct. I think they will. The Saints, as Luke points out here, let's see, I'm going to drop my banner here. Luke points this out here, and I wrote about this week. Alvin Kamara talked about it really well. Poke the bear, you get bit. and that seems to be the Saints' kind of ideology. It seems to be what they've done incredibly well over the last half decade, if you will. I mean, every year we go through the same thing where the Saints come out, either they come out and look flat or they come out and look unbeatable. And either way, you see the reverse hold true. That's a terrible way to put it. But so the last 3 years, they have gone 1-1 every year. The Saints haven't started 2-0 since 2013. This is a team that knows how to lose a game early in the season. They do it as well as anybody. But what they also do as well as anybody is figure out what they did wrong, fix their issues, and take that personally. That's what Alvin Kamara said. He basically said Sean, Cam, DeMario, all the team leaders, they don't accept losing. They don't like that feeling. It's almost like a wake-up call early in the season where, you kind of see some of the issues that you have and you can diagnose them and fix them. And then they come back. I mean, they've had a 6-game winning streak, an 8-game winning streak, a 10-game winning streak. I want to say a 7-game winning streak over the last 4 years following an early season loss. That's what this team does about as well as anybody else. Bounce back, figure out your issues and find ways to correct them. And it hasn't always been with Drew Brees. Keep in mind, and that's the kind of the X factor this year where, they did that all those years, but they had Drew Brees. Well, the fact is they did it. In 2019, they started 1-1. They're coming off a terrible week 2 loss to the LA Rams, right? Drew Brees breaks his thumb or whatever you want to call it. He tore a ligament, had to have surgery. He's out at least 5 weeks. So you're stuck going to Seattle, a terrible place to play for an opponent, with Teddy Bridgewater, who looked awful in week 2 against that Rams team coming in midstream. Lo and behold, Alvin Kamara has a monster game. The Saints win a game that was probably not as close as the score indicated. The Seahawks scored on a late touchdown to not Luke Wilson. I can't remember his name. But, that's what this team does well. This isn't a team that loses back-to-back games, last year notwithstanding. I mean, last year they came back in week 3. I think they played a solid game against the Packers. They lost it. And then they just go on a run. I think they won 6 in a row, maybe 8. And again, 3 of those wins were without Drew Brees. They lost that final game without him to the Eagles. But, this is a team that understands how to win in a lot of different ways. And I think you're going to see that today. Where I think the Saints need to be careful is what you saw in 2019 after Brees went out is they really, really relied heavily on Alvin Kamara. And he delivered. He delivered in that week 3 game against the Seahawks. He had, 170 total yards, a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown. He delivered a week later against the Cowboys. I think he had something like 10 broken tackles in that game. That was the 12-10 win over the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Interesting note, that game, a win, prior to last week, was the lowest offensive output of the Sean Payton era. In a win. They broke that record in week 2 against the Panthers in a loss. But I think that game alone shows you that this Saints team understands how to win games without an overpowering offense. And I think it's more about understanding your personnel and putting them in position to succeed, and also, yes, protecting the quarterback. But I don't think that this is a group that's going to roll over. As Alvin Kamara put it, you poke the bear, you get bit back, and I think that's what you're going to see today. So this is actually what I was going to get into, Mike. So I'm glad you threw this out there. So I don't think you want to overload Alvin Kamara, which is what I was getting to, because after that week 4 game, you went to Jacksonville, and that's where Alvin Kamara hurt his MCL. I don't know if he fully tore it. He had to have surgery in the offseason. He was never the same again. And I think at the running back position specifically, there is a very clear correlation between overloading your running backs and getting them hurt. I mean, it's the most clear position where, the more you touch the ball, the more you're taking hits, the more likely you are to have a season-altering injury. So you always have to be careful about how much of a workload you put on your star running back. We saw it with Chris McCaffrey this week. I want to say he had 60, 70 touches weeks 1 and 2, comes back on Thursday Night Football on short rest and hurts his hamstring, right? He's out for multiple weeks. Look at Todd Gurley, one of the most prolific running backs I've ever seen early in his career, had an insane workload in the first few years with the Rams, and he produced. Where is he now? I don't think he's even on a roster. Le'Veon Bell, another guy who had an insane workload every year with the Steelers, and he was great. But look at the last few years, he just has not been the same. He had a couple season-ending injuries, and that type of injury derails an entire season. So I don't think you want to just throw caution to the wind and say, okay, we're going to force feed Kamara and see what happens. I think what you have to do is get Tony Jones Jr. involved. One of the luxuries of having Latavius Murray the last few seasons was you had this veteran guy who you trusted implicitly. He literally did not fumble in a game with the Saints. It didn't happen. He fumbled in the preseason. He had not fumbled in a game for the Saints. And he was a great blocker. He held up well in protection. He could catch the ball. Drew Brees trusted him, and that was important. And you knew you could put him out there when you needed those tough yards in the middle, take some of that workload off of Kamara, hopefully keeps him healthy, which was the case last year. Kamara was healthy all year. He had kind of his standard workload, and he was able to deliver down the stretch. Obviously, they had a hard time in the playoffs. That Bucs defense was getting after everybody. But I think that Latavius Murray was not there for that game. And I think that second running back role is really important for the Saints team, much more than it might be for some other schemes out there across the league. Because of the way they use Kamara, they don't have a third down back because he is the third down back. He is the pass catching back, but he's also incredibly good between the tackles, and he's incredibly powerful. He's a big guy. He can take hits. Just a matter of how many hits you want him to take. But last week, I don't think you saw nearly enough of Tony Jones. It felt very much like a starter backup as opposed to the standard split you've normally seen. I think that the best split you could get would be closer to what Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara were during those first couple of years there. And so I think that's how you improve the run game, right? Like you need to trust Tony Jones, especially on early downs, to be able to generate positive yardage. You don't need home run plays. But you do need to set yourself up in reasonable down and distance situations on second and third down. I looked it up a couple days after the game. I'm trying to remember now. I want to say the Saints had 13 second down snaps in the game. 9 of those were 2nd and 8 or longer. 4 of them were 2nd and 17 or longer. You're not going to win games constantly having to convert on third down, especially with an offensive line that has not shown it can hold up in obvious passing situations. So what do? Power football. One thing that can help kind of calm down an overmatched offensive line is beat the other team up right in their face, right? You're not getting it complicated. You're not doing anything spectacular. You're pulling guards, you're setting up blockers, and you're just pounding it down their throat and trying to get in positive situations so that when you do drop back to pass, they don't pin their ears back and come straight at you like the Panthers did last week. Panthers did not respect the run game at all. I shared a tweet this week that kind of encompassed that all in one play, which the Saints ran kind of a play action stretch handoff to Kamara. And before Jameis could even come out of his drop, because it was kind of a long drop with the stretch, he had to turn around. He had Hassan Reddick and Derek Wolfe in his face. He couldn't even get the ball out hot. He didn't even have the option. All he could do was, hold on for dear life and hope he didn't fumble. And that's a product of not establishing the run game. There's no reason Alvin Kamara should leave any football game with 5 rushing yards. And I think that another way that you can improve the run game, Taysom Hill has to be involved. I actually thought that some of the only productive sets the Saints ran against the Panthers, were the Taysom Hill power sets, where he was picking up 4, 5, 6 yards on first down. And while you don't want to take your starting quarterback off the field, if the offensive line is unable to hold up in protection, you might have to. I mean, I think that you have to figure out a way to settle down the offensive line, and if that means running more kind of telegraph power sets that you can play action out of and attack downfield, I think you should do that. I don't think that the Saints kept Taysom Hill around to be a backup, and that's really what he's been the first 2 weeks. You have not seen any of these kind of interesting formations where Jameis goes out wide and Taysom takes the snap at quarterback the way you did last year. I feel like you would see at least 2 or 3 of those a game. I don't think you've seen a single one through 2 weeks. And I think that Part of that is probably due to Taysom working as trying to be a quarterback, like a traditional quarterback in training camp. So you weren't able to work on a lot of those sets. I think getting back to that a little bit and kind of making the Patriots chase more than the Saints, more than the Panthers had to, is will be a big step in improving the run game. I think we have one more comment here. Got Luke again. How much of an impact will Thomas have on the season? He's off the COVID list now. Well, I mean, Michael Thomas will be back. Michael Thomas will have a role. He will impact this team. That does not matter this week. He's off the COVID list. He's still 3 weeks away. He can't return until week 7. One thing on the PUP list that is notable is it's not like a suspension. It's not games. It's weeks. So when you're on the PUP list, you have to stay out 6 weeks. The bye counts as one of those weeks. So he can return in week 7. Whereas David Onyemata, for instance, suspended 6 games. The bye does not count toward that suspension. So week 7 is technically his 6th game. So he will not return until week 8. But Michael Thomas, he's off the COVID list, which is good. He can continue his rehab without any, hurdles that might be thrown his way because of the COVID protocols and whatnot. But he's several weeks away. I mean, but he's still Michael Thomas. Assuming he comes back and he's healthy and he's 100%, I mean, he's going to have a huge impact on this season. But again, there's only so much a wide receiver can do when the quarterback doesn't have time to throw the ball. It's not about running bootlegs. It's not about doing anything fancy. The Panthers just ate up the offensive line last week. And what you don't want to see is that become kind of a I don't want to say playbook, but basically just a menu for other teams to kind of pick off of throughout the season. You have to get better. You have to improve. Hopefully the Saints have figured it out. We're going to find out. We're about a little over an hour away from kickoff. I'm going to leave you here in a second. First, again, my name is Jeff Nowak, WWL. Wow, that was too many W's. WWL Digital Sports Producer. Make sure you check out all of our products over on Audacy.com/WWL. I'm going to try to share my screen here. There it is. Make sure you check out Audacy.com/WWL. We have a whole Saints page. A lot of great stuff. Go through some of that. Get you ready for the game. Make sure to tune into the final hour of our Saints pregame show over on WWL AM 870, FM 105.3. We got Christian Garrick and Bobby Hebert kind of getting you up ready to kick off. After then, they will kick it over to Mike Haas and the great Deuce McAllister for the game day broadcast. Make sure you tune into that. Mute the TV. You don't need to hear that anyway. Sync up the audio. You'll be good to go. One thing of note, you cannot stream it on mobile devices. It's an NFL rule. We can't do anything about it. I know it's annoying, but make sure to check that out. They do a great job. And if you heard that Auburn call, TJ Finley with that crazy last-second touchdown, listen to the audio back. That's Deuce on the call. He's over doing SEC Network on Saturdays. Did a great job yesterday with that game. Okay, we got one prediction here. Saints win more when they're underdogs. It's not really a prediction, but it is true. The Saints team seems to – I think this Saints group, particularly Sean Payton, really appreciates not having to explain why they're better than the other team. They like going into a game feeling like they're being disrespected. I think any football team gets a bit of an edge, you'd say a chip on your shoulder in that circumstance. And the Saints, I think, have done that as well as anybody. But I'm going to get ready for kickoff. You can follow me over at Twitter on Jeff_Nowak. Make sure to, again, check out Audacy.com/WWL. Thanks for everyone who tuned in, stuck with me through the internet issues. We're still having some Cox problems after Ida. I think the infrastructure is a little damaged, but we'll make it through. As I said before, make sure to go over and subscribe on YouTube. I got the channel there below. It's WWL Sports, putting great stuff up there every week and try to get more news analysis kind of incorporated from the broadcast. So I'd love to hear from anybody who's a subscriber, who is planning to subscribe, what they want to see, what they would like to see more of, what they would like to see less of. And that can be me. Don't worry. I won't be offended. But yeah, until then, okay, one last question. What time do they play? Deborah, great question. Saints play at noon. I think I said that way earlier before my internet cut out. Saints play at noon over on Fox. You can listen to it on WWL. And we'll see what happens. 1-2, 2-1, big difference. But until then, peace.